Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is October 22nd, 2024, and you are listening and watching the Daily AI Show live. And today, as you can see on our screen, if you're watching, we're talking all about AI agents, but more specifically, what we want to talk about today, and we're going to probably let Carl jump into this in a second, is we want to talk about AI agnostic agents that are tool agnostic that can be used or potentially be used if they don't exactly exist today. We can kind of see the future here. They can be used across tools, across softwares, across platforms, CRMs, or does it make sense, or is there a hybrid approach where what HubSpot is doing with Breeze, what Salesforce is doing with Agentforce, what Microsoft came out of the gate early with Copilot, where these tools, these agents, and we'll talk about what that term actually means, but what these agents actually do and whether it makes sense to build within these platforms, or is that something that's going to handcuff businesses pretty quickly here if they do go and build only within, let's say, HubSpot. But then they realize pretty quickly next year or the year after they have these greater needs for these agents, but they can't do anything outside of the ecosystem of, let's say, HubSpot or something. So that's the idea of today's conversation. I look like I am freezing on my own screen, so I'm going to go ahead and quickly pass this over to Carl so I can check on what's going on. I'm working off of an older computer today while I make some transitions. So, Carl, why don't you pick it up from here, and I'll see what's going on with my live stream. You're on mute, buddy. Nope, still can't hear you. Okay, Andy, Jimmy, pick it up.
All right, here we go. So agents are really at the cutting edge of AI technology. You might have heard, if you've been watching our show regularly, that we've talked about 2024 being the year of agents. And agents are starting to come out of the forest here of various startups and major companies. And what we mean by agents and the most advanced cutting edge kind of AI technology is a combination of an LLM and attendant action and function calling kind of capabilities that go beyond simple task execution in response to a prompt. They can plan, they can reason, they can adapt, they can learn from experience, making them suitable for a wide range of applications across different industries. Now, you can focus an LLM or you can focus an agent on a specific industry and on a specific piece of software, which is what Brian was alluding to when you talk about the platform-specific agents that are being offered now by companies who offer already a service as a software that's focused on whether sales force management or marketing execution. And then there are other companies out there that are trying to develop a more broad purpose, generalized agent platform. So I'm going to mention a couple of those companies. Adept AI has been around for a while, and they have an agent that can translate, written intent into actions across various software applications. And if it doesn't already have access to that software application, it'll study that software application and build its connection to that one. So it's becoming autonomous, meaning you don't have to set it up and configure it specifically to do something. It can go out and create multimodal web interactions and efficiently automate complex tasks and workflow processes. So these are the two different approaches that we're talking about today. And I'm just going to say, to kick off the conversation, that in general, by narrowing the boundary of what you want an agent to do to your own platform and all the functions that are already afforded by that platform, let's say within the Salesforce ecosystem, by focusing on that, you create a boundary for the problem that makes it easier to execute, test, and deploy that kind of agency on behalf of the already subscribers of that system, and give them an agentic coworker that can actually execute a lot of the processes that you might otherwise have to do personally and manually.
Okay.
I'm back now. I think everything.
You're
I think
good.
everyone
Go
can
for
hear
it.
me. So I want to point out. I don't know if anyone has. I wouldn't say a brewing war, because if it's not really a war if there's just one side throwing like verbal bombs,
Shade.
but I don't know if anybody knows, ever been paying attention to Mark Benioff from Salesforce, just going at it, especially going at it to Microsoft. So, and in one, I just want to read what it was a TechCrunch article where he said, we may have heard from these AI priests and priestesses of, I've never heard anyone calling anybody that, by the way, of these LM model companies and Microsoft and others about AI is now curing cancer, AI is curing climate change, and we all have to plug into these nuclear power plants to get these data centers. None of this is true. And then he says LMs are not the direct bridge to AGI, and much of AI's current potential is simply oversold. AI isn't yet curing cancer or solving climate change, as pundits claim. I'm not sure who the pundits he's talking about, unless he's talking about, random tech bros on X. I just think though it's interesting coming from Mark Benioff, who's saying all these things about Copilot, which ironically Copilot, I don't know if it's ironic, but like yesterday Copilot released Copilot Studio Autonomous Agent, where it's supposed to be, I don't know if that is an agent. Actually, I want to go back a little bit, Andy, to what is an agent, or what is the expectation of an agent? Because I feel like that word is being thrown around a lot, right? When I saw HubSpot's Breeze quote unquote agents, in my mind, that wasn't an agent. When I'm looking at Agentforce and some of those agents, I do not see them as agents. Even Copilot Studio agents yesterday, I didn't see them as agents. Honestly, I thought them as very somewhat robust Zapier and Make automations. That's all I saw them as. To me, what an agent, the expectation for me is something that is autonomous, that can create its own tasks, not be pre-programmed with tasks, and decide this is the task I should do. Oh, that task doesn't work. I'm going to go back and try something different. Autonomously, outside the scope of here's a task you're to do when an email comes in. So that is the trigger. The trigger is an event and it kicks off some workflow. So when people say agents, I was like, haven't we built lots of that through Zapier and Make already, or other tools like Cassidy and Respell? So I'm kind of confused what an agent is supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And maybe we all can have a discussion on the definition of an agent. So that's the first part. Let's have that conversation with definition of agent, because the second part I want to go into is, yeah, these are all like platform specific agents. My expectation is when OpenAI, Anthropic, Meta, especially Zuckerberg was talking about an agent, all these agents are supposed to be able to platform agnostic, go into and do things for us on our behalf, not just on HubSpot, just on Salesforce.
Let's talk about agent really quick, because I just posed this in the comments too. So anybody that's live with us in YouTube, I'd love to hear Jude or Cisco or Jeff. How do you guys define agents? How do you see it? Do you agree with kind of what you'll probably hear here is that it should be this autonomous mechanism? But Carl, I do want to push back a little bit, because you said it just goes. But my understanding of an agent in the future, I don't think we've necessarily seen one, unless you really get into like Intel ops and you get into like financial stuff and what credit card companies are doing. I think that stuff gets really, really complicated, and there might be some instances of this already that exist, but just really within a specific like sub industry. But what I was going to say to it is, there still is a trigger. Okay, even if an agent is going to autonomously do something on my behalf. And let's just even go farther and say it does it across platforms. So, the examples I've given before is from a text message back and forth with my daughter about a new song that she likes, that an agent picks up and says, I can go grab that from Spotify and add it to your list so that it comes up on my playlist next. That's a very simplified idea of, I didn't tell it to do that, but because it saw the interaction between my daughter and I, it felt like it might be valuable to add such and such song to a list. Let's say it did that on its own, but the trigger would still be this defined parameters of me as the user saying, hey, it's okay for you, the agent, the AI agent, to read the text messages between my daughter and I on my phone, and at points make suggestions about X, Y, and Z. So then if you extrapolate that out to business, I still think that's the case. There's still these guardrails that have to be built by businesses that say, hey, this is when it's okay or not okay for you, autonomous agent, to come into play. But there's definitely some places where we don't want you to come in ever. Like, it's never, ever, ever going to be okay for you to go do an autonomous thing as a kickoff to this trigger. So, I mean, I still think there's triggers, I guess, is what I'm getting to here. Yes, I believe they're autonomous. That's what an agent should be. Copilot, or rather HubSpot, Salesforce, I believe they're all using the term agent incorrectly. They mean workflows that have some basic reasoning to them. That's their current working definition of it. And the reason for that is because what we define as an agent doesn't currently exist, to my knowledge. So what do you guys think about that? Is there still triggers, or is this just going on its own?
I think there's always going to be a trigger. There's always going to be whatever the will to initiate, right? I'm sure that can be automated to an extent as well in the future. But right now, the iteration that we're going to see is I want my agent to handle all of my appointment scheduling, or, something along those lines. You're going to turn on that trigger, and anytime a calendar request comes in, it can do that, as a simple example. But I think Carl's right. We have a great opportunity right now to define how we're going to discuss agents in this conversation and other conversations. And I think, Carl, you hit the nail on a few of those things: autonomy, goal oriented, how it interacts with its environment or the world, the fact that it can do decision making, right? So that it can go on to the next step, and learning and adapting from when it runs into a roadblock, right? I think those are 5 key characteristics, and that all kind of falls within the ability to go, hey, I'm trying to do this goal, which we create, right? We create the goal. That's the trigger. It's autonomous enough to run on its own to accomplish that goal. It interacts with other environments, other agents, other programs, other other software, things like that, other systems. Then it's able to make decisions on how it interacts with those systems. We've seen this in some of the search capabilities, like Perplexity, being able to reason out what the next best step is, and then when you run into that roadblock, being able to learn from it, going, oh, that doesn't do to accomplish the goal. I'm going to adapt and change direction and try it from a different angle and adapt that way. So that's the way I look at those five steps there, and I think that encompasses pretty much what we're imagining as an agent. What do you think?
Andy, I'd love to get your take on it. And then after that, Jude, Justin, and Jeff, 3 J's in there, all shared their definitions as well, which we'll definitely pull in here in a second. So, but Andy, do you kind of see it the same way, or do you have a slightly different take on it?
Yeah, the litmus test for me for being an agent is it approximating a coworker's capabilities? So, can it search for information online? Can it perform tasks, within our systems? Can it send messages and respond to messages without me directing it to? in order to collect information through our communications channels? And can it write code? Because it's going to need to write code if it's working in that environment, and set up tools and integrations in the company context. That's an agent. But I agree with what you guys have been saying, that many of the things that are being promoted as agents within a specific platform are really workflow automations with a little bit of, sensibility, let's call it. But it's not quite yet the coworker agent, which is my test for it.
Yeah,
I think it wasn't.
Sorry, I was just say, if you see a chatbot, right, Carl, you've done this plenty of times. You've worked with clients on this, and it's a chat window, and now it's this like better version of a chat window where it's able to infer maybe from some of the conversation and make suggestions, or say like, hey, this is what's going on with your account, and a human doesn't be involved. I wouldn't call that an agent. I would call that an advanced chat function that's got a bit of reasoning to it, that's able to look at a set of predefined data that the company says is okay for it to review, and bring back those answers to a customer. And sort of, Andy, yes, is that doing something that a human might have had to have done manually, or human before? Yeah, but I would stop way short of saying, oh, that's an agentic workflow, because like, to me, that's just, again, automation plus slight reasoning. It's which we know an LLM can do. It's the combination of an LLM plus workflow is what people are passing off as agents. And Carl, give me your answer on this. Also, are we just too in the trees here? Is it that we care because we talk about AI all the time, and like it? I will say it bothers me when people use this term incorrectly. But also, like, does the general user care what you call an agent or not agent? Like, does it have long lasting impact? Because that's another part of it too. Like, I care, but do most people care? Or they're like, whatever, call it whatever you want. I just want to know if it works.
No, that's true too. I think the maybe where this came out of is way back when, right when GPT-4 came out, we had all these, what was it, God mode, like all these quote unquote agents that were supposed to come out and do things quote unquote autonomously. And I remember, I forgot what show it was, where I said, I want to do a marketing research, and then it would go off, and then it would say, oh, here's 100 people I surveyed, and this is the results. I was like, hold on a second, can I see the results? And it would time out. I was like, wait a minute, you did no such research. Who did you talk to? How did you survey all these people? What were the questions? So maybe that's where I was thinking about. But I remember, so here's the weird thing. Dharmesh Shah, who is I think co-founder of HubSpot .ai right now. I remember one of his first blog posts was he gave a definition of what an agent's supposed to be. Funny enough, it's gone. I can't find it. It's scrubbed completely clean. I was like, hey, how come? Because his definition was the one that I first gravitated toward too. And where he said it's supposed to be autonomous. It's supposed to be able to complete a goal. There's a couple of criteria that he had for it. I could see the shift though, where if you look at what agent.ai is, it's like I was saying, it's a lot of it is robust workflow automations that just, instead of going through Zapier or Make, it just does it by itself. So it does the web scraping. It doesn't need to go through multiple SaaS tools. It just has that one specific task. So I do want to pivot now our conversation just one bit to.
Before you pivot really quick, Carl, I'm sorry, but can I bring in the 3 comments real quick?
Yeah.
So we have a full scope of definition, because I know you want to pivot to like, okay, now that we know, which way do we go? So Jeff said, an agent is a machine that observes the world, makes a plan to change the world, and takes action in the world, and then runs this in a loop. I think that's a really good way of saying that. So thank you, Jeff, for that. And then Justin said, I'd say an agent is an AI application that autonomously acts across platforms to complete tasks and return results. It should be capable of solving problems independently when given a task. So I would say that's sort of in line, Justin. I think you're saying sort of a lot of what we're saying. Jude says, I agree with your definition of an agent, Brian, finely tuned and trained for a specific talents to achieve a desired result. So I think and then Cisco said, I'm just trying to see if there's anything more to add here. Cisco said, I think the last step would be to evaluate its response with the answer. So I think we're all in the same hemisphere here, or we're all close to it, and we're all saying similar things. So let's call that an agent. I think we've sort of defined that. And now, Carl, you said you want to pivot here to the bigger conversation of today's show. So let's go ahead, go take it from there.
Yeah. So the pivot that I want, actually, before I go, and I just want to go back to Dharmesh's own definition of an agent. There's 5 pieces. It's goal-oriented. Agents break down complex goals to smaller actionable tasks. They track their own progress towards achieving the specified goal. Agents can interact with digital resources and other AI agents to accomplish their objectives. And number 5 is autonomy. While not strictly required, agents often operate with minimal human intervention. So that was the definition that, and I actually found the article, because if you go to the actual page, it's a 404. But I found what it was, and I'm like, oh, this is the official definition of his official definition. Software that uses AI to pursue a specified goal. It accomplishes this by decomposing the goal into actionable tasks, monitoring its progress, and engaging with digital resources and other agents as necessary. Funny enough, none of agent.ai does any of that. So I can understand why he scrapped that, because I don't think Agentforce, Copilot Studio, and HubSpot Breeze does any of that. Decomposing a goal into own actionable tasks, monitoring its progress, and then engaging with digital resources and other agents as necessary.
Now, in narrower confines, and specifically, I'll talk about the coding agents now. Devin, Replit Agent, Bolt.new, those 3 do those things that you describe. They take a very generalized instruction, they break it down into component tasks, and then they, interact with you to refine that and execute. And they'll do it in a number of different ways. They'll either present here, okay, here's the steps that you need to take in order to do that. And so that's really useful. And then if you say, well, no, I don't want to do that, I want you to do that, they go, okay, here we go. I'm launching the project and I'm doing this. Watch as I do it. Those are agents. And I'm experiencing that, probably the area that I think is most exciting at the moment for me personally is being able to develop, using these brand new coding agents. These have not been around for 6 months yet. And at least in the hands of people like me who aren't actual developers. And so they're performing the full range, and they're doing it with autonomous attention and execution across multiple sessions. And it's pretty amazing.
So I think that's where I wanted to pivot to the conversation about agnostic and platform specific agents, because where the question I have is, you have a whole bunch of, because Mark Benioff at Dreamforce said, oh, you'll have thousands of these agents around. I'm like, wait a second. If I'm on Microsoft and I have a bunch of agents, quote unquote, and then I go to Salesforce and have thousands of agents, then I go to HubSpot and have thousands of agents, and then it's inevitable, every single platform will have some sort of quote unquote agent. So I'm like, who's going to build all these agents? Who's going to maintain all these agents? Can I keep track of these agents? What does this mean? Or is it, hey, these are just essentially workflows in each of these platforms that have been called agents? And then is that what it is?
Well, Let me talk about one word that you use there, like in the definition, which was it can call upon other agents. And we talked on a recent show about the idea of a swarm of agents. And important as one of the capabilities of an agent, in my view, is the ability to create a subroutine, if you will, in the form of an agent and launch that agent to handle a task while its primary instruction following and planning and execution are attending to other things. So being able to spawn, another agent, I think, is what some of these commentators may be referring to when they say there's going to be thousands of agents out there. Those may be very, very temporal agents, meaning, okay, my agent, my personal master agent, created this set of agents to do all these tasks and do it in an efficient and timely manner. But once done, those agents are idle. And I'm not going to call on them again. They don't have an identity. They're just these routines that have been created that have some of the characteristics of agents. They're autonomous. They can plan and execute their subtask and so on. What do you think of that?
And again, it kind of goes back to our definition of agent, because I feel maybe that there was a podcast who was talking about it. They were talking about this a while back. I think Paul Raitzer talked about the world of bits further back, where he wrote that article, I think in 2021 or 2022. And there's different levels of agents, right? And maybe that level right now is for the platform specific agents, where you have this specific SaaS tool calling their things agents. But when you're talking about, Andy, and where I think we're thinking about is what kind of agents can say open. Let's say the AI Labs gives us an agent that can take control of my computer, not my computer, like the ability to browse, the ability, or what they call tooling, the ability to leverage digital resources and interact with another agent. So I say, hey, I need you to, and I showed this in another episode, very, very like Hyperwrite created this kind of agent where I just gave it an instruction. Hey, I need you to order a pizza for me near a Hawaiian pizza for me. And it actually went out, found a bunch of stuff, and 60% of the time led to a checkout page from Domino's. Not the pizza place I would go to, but that's what it led to. So I thought that would be amazing. That to me was an agent of hints of it. So my question is, would the agent that we're going to get, say, from an OpenAI interact with the Salesforce agent? Or do we even need that agent when this agnostic agent can go out and just do exactly what we want it to do? So that there's that balance of like agnostic agent versus platform agent, and there's pros and cons to both.
And I don't think they're mutually exclusive either. By the way, you mentioned Hyperwrite. I still maintain that Hyperwrite's self-operating computer is what they called it. And it's just something they were building on the side. I demoed it on this show probably maybe a year ago, which is crazy to think about. I still think that is the closest I've seen to an actual agent. And it was months and months and months ago. And what it was doing was using vision to look at and take screen grabs of my desktop screen and then determine based on what it saw what the next operation should be. And to your point, Carl, I did see probably 60% success rate with it, where it was basically you would watch it if you took your hands off the wheel, you off the mouse. You actually watched it go on the left-hand side in the self-operating computer in the console. It would say, okay, the next thing I think I need to do is I'm on a Windows. So open the Windows tab so I can see what my options are. Okay, now that I can see the options, the next thing I want to do is move the mouse to open up Spotify or whatever the app was, and then on and on and on. And it would do it. You would see it move the mouse and it would say, okay, I wasn't able to open Spotify. Let me try it a different way. I'm going to close the desktop and open the desktop again and do it again, which is what Andy and Carl was, Carl had to jump off real quick, but what he was just talking about in terms of that reasoning through, okay, this process didn't work, but maybe I should take it this way. So the hyperwrite sub-operating computer, I still think is the best version of something I've seen of like a hint of the future where we're using vision plus LLMs and all of it together to basically operate my computer. It works sometimes. It didn't work all the time on it. What I was going to say though, on top of that was whether we're talking about agnostic agents, which I think we've sort of, again, unless they're in some niche sub-industries like finance and they are actually bouncing through different softwares and things that I wouldn't be privy to, I wouldn't know that it exists. But outside of those use cases, we're basically saying, okay, like our definition of agents doesn't currently exist. The term agent is being used in other ways for automations with maybe some reasoning to them. But that's not to say that the future isn't a mesh of this. And it's what I kind of expect will happen is that HubSpot will have Breeze or whatever they call it later. They'll change it. Agentforce, same thing with Salesforce. You know, they'll change the name 6 times. But whatever that ends up being, Copilot with Microsoft, and they'll exist within those ecosystems, and they will have really good, helpful workflows, agents, right? They're calling them agents, right? They're helpful. They're helpful to the end user, whatever. But what I suspect that we'll see are smarter, more evolved agents that are able through either an API call or something more advanced than an API call with writing capability and going in both directions, where there's sort of a master agent that starts outside of these programs, but then would actually call into quote unquote Breeze inside a HubSpot. And then it would use one of the current beta HubSpot agents to perform the task, but it would be operated outside of HubSpot. It wouldn't originate inside HubSpot. In other words, it's just agents using agents at that point and saying, well, this is the task. I broke it down. I've reasoned. I've O1 previewed it, essentially. I've decided that these are the next 6 steps I should take. Step 1 is go into HubSpot and open up the Breeze agent that does X, Y, Z. Did that work? Did it not work? Did I get the result I want? Refresh, remove through. So that's what I think is going to happen. I don't know how far away we are from that, but I would imagine well over a year from that type of agentic workflow. Where
and I think you're right that we're not quite there with the agnostic personalized agent that is responsive to whatever my intentions are. And the whole idea of platform specific agents that are being provided today is this sandbox concept. Like this agent only works within this sandbox. And one of the things that we like about the idea of an agnostic agent is it's going to be free in the digital world to act on my behalf. Now I'll have some controls over it. And there are a lot of questions about, whether it's permissible to release agents that have autonomy and execution capabilities without having careful control over what they decide to do in that process. But I believe that there's going to be this mesh, if you will, thank you, Brian, of platform-specific sandboxed agents that are callable, just like an API is today, by an agnostic, personalized, on-device agent, an AI agent that's on my smartphone, it's on my desktop, and that is going to replace applications out there. Mm-hmm. Right. So today, if I want to find the weather, I open a weather application on my phone. Eventually, I'll just ask my personal AI agent to do that simple task, along with many more complex tasks. And it will necessarily have authority that I grant it and agency to go out and act on my behalf in certain contexts. And the agent on the platform side is going to make sure that I'm a subscriber to that platform before my agent can interact with that agent. So we've talked about that on the show before too, about the idea of having this in sort of, there's walls the firewalls, if you will, that have to be crossed out there for privacy and for security protections. And our agents will have to have some kind of permissions architecture that doesn't exist today. All of those things that are being done in the sandbox don't require permissions. Why? They're only accessible by people who have already subscribed and are within that sandbox.
It's two things too. One is, remember the 5 levels of stages of AI that OpenAI has, right? Level 3 is agents, systems that can take action for days. And at the dev day, at the recent dev day in San Francisco, the question was, how do agents fit in OpenAI's long-term plans? Sam Altman said, with O1 and its predecessors, 2025 is when agents will work. People get used to any tech quickly, but this will be a big deal. Reference to what we talked about yesterday about Sam talking how fast the rate of AI progress versus society's ability to adapt. Then he goes, people will ask an agent to do something that would have taken them a month and it'll take an hour. Then they'll have 10x agents, then they'll have 1000x agents. So to me, that fits the definition of what this agent's supposed to be, not necessarily, or these agents will interact with Salesforce agents and get those agents to do exactly what we want it to do. And that's sort of maybe, Brian, where you're thinking like, hey, that's where the interactions are, and that platforms have to prepare for agents, personal agents, and how do they prepare for that when those agents are trying to get information, complete tasks. And there was talk about advertising. How do you advertise to an agent? So it's no longer about display or, hey, here's our platform, but more of, here's the discounts your platform will get, or how do you get their agents to go back with that information to the actual user? And I have to go back to the former CEO of Bumble, where she was talking about your dating concierge matching with your personal concierge. I feel that's
she's all in on that.
Yeah. She's all in on that, and I felt that was
it.
I was like, maybe not in the dating context, but like she is actually onto something outside of that, and I don't know if like she actually understands the gravity of what she was talking about beyond that dating world.
I think she does, because I think she realizes that is the future of a platform like Bumble, and they are actively working towards it. And here's what I want to say to that: 2 things. One, what can you do today? We're talking about things that don't necessarily exist, right? But some do, but some don't. So what do you do? Okay, I want to talk about that in a second. But also back to the Sam Altman comment and what we talked about yesterday, because Carl, this is it is a big deal. People definitely need to be thinking about this. I'll give an analogy, because I love a good story to help me conceptualize. So this is what popped into my head 30 seconds ago as Carl was talking. Pop-up shops. Okay, we have seen these before. They're certainly becoming a little bit more trendy, where you might go into a mall and it's not a full store, but maybe they've used the first half of that store, and there's a pop-up shop for, maybe it's a music artist, maybe it's a up-and-coming clothing designer. My daughter really loves like Brandy Melville, which is a style of designer. So maybe there's a pop-up shop. Okay, right now, for that to happen requires, I would imagine, many, many moving pieces, of which humans are intimately involved. There's got to be, who's the local, like, I don't want to ship it all over the world. So if it's a Brandy Melville, who's creating the actual garments, whether they're just prints or whatever the case is. And then the social media and all this. Okay. My take on this is, because the individual pieces and parts are already being created, it's not as if agents require the technology to be built from scratch, from zero today. There's a lot of pieces and parts of an agentic workflow that already exist. And what we're saying is this mesh, putting them together, it's probably going to happen faster than we realize. So what that means is, in a very short period of time, it could be very possible, could be good for business too, but it could also put a lot of people out of business. I think it'd be very possible for somebody to say to an agent, I want to do a pop-up shop on this date. And all the pieces and parts of that are organized, handled, and done by the agent. and the humans show up on the day of it with the deliveries happening in the boxes, with the content, with the social media, and it's all being done without humans actually having to touch it. So that's my first part I wanted to say, is like where I really feel like this is going. The private chat on here is covers Andy's face every 30 seconds.
No,
Still trying to get used to Restream, guys. Still trying to get used to stuff, but it's like pops up, pops up, pops up. Okay, sorry, that's a little distracting. What I wanted to say is, like, what can you do today? Like, what can you do? Well, I think you go and play in O1 preview a little bit more. Go and play in Claude, because here's the thing. They're showing you the steps. They're breaking it down. And we already know that you will get better AI results if you think clearly through the steps. Rachel Woods from the AI Exchange, and somebody that sort of ultimately is responsible for all us meeting each other, she would always say to me on a call, Brian, could you do that in more steps? Could you break that down farther? Could you break that down into more chewable pieces? And it would already be a process that I was thinking through, maybe a make automation that I already felt like was pretty, well defined through the pieces. And she would push back against me and say, could step 2 there actually be 2 steps in itself? And her point to saying that and pushing back was valid, which is to say, can you think through this process more deeply? Can you break it down? So why would you want to do this? Well, number one, it's already today, it's going to give you better AI results, whether that's in prompting, prompt chaining, chain of thought, all of this is going to be better. And you can actually look at O1 preview when you ask a question of what the reasoning steps were, which might actually help you. But these are the same things that are going to be the human in the loop for future agentic workflows, because you're not just going to press go on day one. You're not just going to get an 8-hour workflow that's just done for you, or an 8-day or an 8-month workflow that's done in 1 month instead. There's going to have to be humans in the loop, and the humans are going to have to understand what the steps are to begin with. So if you're at a business right now and you're thinking, how can I better prepare for tomorrow for these things that these folks, or the 4 of us, are saying are coming, and we've been saying are coming, my answer to it is start thinking about your processes deeply today. Because if you want to hand that off to AI in the future, you first have to understand what the process is. You can't assume that the AI is going to be able to connect all the dots. So that's something every business could literally do in every department today, is just take stock of what are the actual processes that are happening, break them down into chewable pieces, have other people internally push back and say, could it be better? Could we break that down more? If we handed this to an intern today, would they be able to complete the task as defined? These are all things businesses can do today that are going to set you up for agentic workflows tomorrow, next year, 2025. We don't know, but you can be more prepared today. That's at least my take on this.
Brian, there's one process that I think everybody knows. Can you go under my sink, open the door, take out my recycling, go down the stairs, go outside, open the door, go outside, go up the stairs, open the thing, and dump my recycling? That's all I want. I don't care if you're a robot, you're an agent. I need you to do that. So I have documented these steps. I know these steps.
Yeah, you've thought deeply about it, clearly.
So I will feed this in. I need you to follow these steps on the Tuesday and the Thursday, yes, and maybe the odd Wednesday.
I think we need to interview Carl's wife and find out why he's so resistant to doing household chores.
Yeah, specifically taking out the recycling, which is a bigger deal in Canada than anywhere else I've ever heard of, ever, which is amazing because I've done recycling in Berlin, and that's at a whole other level. Berlin is leading the charge of separating out your recyclables and stuff like that. So God knows when an agent can do that, that will be the penultimate for me on that. Okay, as we're wrapping things up here, anything else we want to talk about here? Like anything else you feel like, not just businesses, but what can people be doing outside of maybe what I was mentioning? Okay, these agents, as we're defining them, I think we've reasonably said we don't believe they exist. People have thrown agents and slapped that term, and will continue to slap it because it's buzzworthy. So was Copilot a year ago. We saw Copilot on everything. HubSpot uses Copilot and agent together in their Breeze product. It's your agent Copilot. So now we're just adding words together to make it even better, because that's what HubSpot believes in marketing people want to see. That's what they believe people are going to buy. So we're going to continue to see these words. But on our definition, is there anything else we can put out there that would be helpful as we're waiting for some of these bits and pieces to come together?
Yes. The action model, the large action model. Don't forget that. This is they haven't disappeared. The Rabbit has in their rabbit hole, which is their website, they've made available the large action model, which takes actions on your behalf after learning about them. And I haven't tried it yet, but I promise I will. So yes, let's never forget, Rabbit's there.
I'd say start practicing your automations and build out your automations now. Because guess what? When the agents come out, they can use your automations, so you can get half the work done already, and they won't have to figure it out. They can just use what you have already. And like Brian said, keep on the AI literacy and keep on the media awareness and things like that, so that you don't get caught into the hype cycle, because they're just going to spew out anything that is going to make a sale, as opposed to helping you define and learn what each of those things are. And then, of course, stay tuned to the Daily AI Show, where we'll give you all the real definitions and all the important information.
And I'm just realizing that Thumper, I didn't realize that Thumper needs some modifications and updates, because Thumper no longer fits the 2016, the i16 model. And that's problematic. Not to say that this isn't one whole device, of course. This is one, Thumper is its own device, but I think we're going to need some modifications here as Thumper truly moves into agentic workflows. But don't count out Thumper, man. They're serious.
Wait, on
about
our
this.
tracker, how many days since the announcement of Thumper, and why can't I get one?
Listen, I don't know if we need to get into that.
I think it's
Andy.
like
There's a lot going
267, something along those lines.
I think it's on the lead. It's leading the leaderboard for longest gap.
No, I think Sora is leading the leaderboard right now.
Sora might be up there. All right, listen, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks everybody for hanging out. Thank you as always to everybody in the comments and providing your definitions of agents and helping the conversation move forward. Love that. It's really it just makes the whole conversation better. We'll continue to do that. So we'll wrap it up for today. Tomorrow we got the news, so come on back. You never know when something will happen in agents by today and tomorrow in the news, and we'll be talking about it again. We'll continue to. I know there's been some freezes. I want to at least call it out. Some freezes and some blips and stuff like that. We are actively working on it. If you've been following us for a while, you know that we recently moved from StreamYard to Restream, and we are evaluating that decision. That's about the best we can tell you, and working through the process. But sometimes you don't know until you use the tool for a little bit. As we make new changes and adapt with AI, we will always let you know what's going on behind the scenes, because it might be something that can help you out as well. All right, that's it for today, guys. Until tomorrow, have a great one. And thanks for hanging out with us today. Bye.
Aloha.